Well, I promised you all a surprise guest tonight. We've got Bradford Ferguson, I don't know, in London or some such place, flying around and doing various things on cruise ships and whatnot. So his partner at Rebellion Air, Matt Smith, is going to fill in tonight. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Randy, I got some big shoes to fill, but excited to be here with you.
Well, we won't talk about his size. I mean, that's that.
Well, his size has shrunk quite a bit, actually. So, I think he's happy about his size. I
Uh,
actually was at the X Takeover event last weekend, and I had somebody ask me if I've lost weight recently, and I was like, no, like I didn't know how to take that. So
yeah, yeah, right. I think you're kind of a thin guy anyway, right?
that's what I thought, but I guess I come across on camera, at least to that guy, as a little on the bigger side.
Isn't that funny? Or maybe he was thinking of Brad. Anyway, so let's go ahead. Let's start with I think what everybody's thinking about right now in our world. I'm guessing that most of the people that watch this channel are holds. They're sitting here holding Tesla. They don't probably buy in or sell out that much, but you know, a lot of people when they get dry powder, they're going to buy, and some of them might be moving. I did a little poll the other day, and some people were shifting some money over into Nvidia.
hmm
Not very many, but a few. So let's talk about the stock today, the stock action today. So, Tesla doesn't seem to want to go above 220. I'm sorry, 320, no matter what
uh
happens with the news, what happens with the overall market. I mean, it was going up yesterday, going up today, and Tesla was like, no, I'm not going to go above 320. And then when it went down later in the session, Tesla was perfectly happy to go ahead and write it down to 310. So what do you think's going? Are we going to be testing 300, or what do you think's going to happen here in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I think we are in this bit of a weird spot where they kind of need to prove out the Robotaxi thesis a little bit more. I kind of thought with the news we got this morning, at least I saw it first this morning, of the expansion to San Francisco in a massive area too. It wasn't just like a tiny area. I mean, it was like all of San Francisco all the way down to Silicon Valley. I mean, it was the entire Bay Area. I mean, that's a huge area. So, I mean, when you think about what Elon was saying on that last earnings call of, getting to half the US population by year end, it's like, okay, well, clearly nobody believed him. Otherwise the stock would have reacted when he said that. But now here we are actually with a very significant expansion to another geography. Admittedly, there still are some questions about like, okay, how many teleoperators are they going to have? How many cars are they going to have? So it's not like this is a slam dunk with no, questions. But still, I thought the stock would react favorably to this. So the fact that it didn't, one, just caught me off guard, but two, I think shows that Tesla is going to need to do, some more thorough execution, I think, to kind of prove that the business model actually works and is viable. So yeah, I was surprised by that for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I do know that coming up later tonight, we got Cern Basher, and he is going to be pointing out that there's jobs out there for uh, test drivers
hmm
for about, I don't know, like 12 more cities across the country, including Boston.
Uh-huh.
So it looks like the expansion is going to be coming at us quite quickly. Uh,
Yeah.
I
I,
suggest,
I was also mistaken for Stern Bashert this past weekend too.
oh,
So,
you were,
that one I could take it. It was an interesting weekend for sure. But
okay.
yeah, you're right. It's not just the Bay Area.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of additional cities being planned. So the other day, one of the things I was thinking was that maybe we'd be looking at a very slow, cautious Austin,
hmm
but at some point, the technical side of it and the logistics side of it are the deployment side, whatever you want to call it, the ability to get cyber cabs or robotaxis to people on a timely way. Those things are going to be kind of dealt with in the Austin rollout. And then at some point, it would seem like you could roll it out really fast.
Yeah, the way I think about it, I think the limiting factor for the super fast rollout is going to be when you can get those operators out of the car. Because those operators, they need to take breaks. You've got to hire each one of them. You've got to make sure that they're actually qualified to step in and stop the vehicle if needed. So when you can actually get them out of the loop, I think the expansion pace gets a massive unlock. Clearly we're not there yet, given that in all these different geographies, we're looking to actually hire more operators. So maybe 5 or 6 more months of this potentially, which is longer than I would hope for, and I hope that's just a bit of a hand wavy guess. So I hope I'm wrong on that front, but yeah, it does seem that they're going to expand pretty rapidly to a bunch of different geographies, but still with a similar sort of model where you've got these operators. So I think they are going to be somewhat limited in how many vehicles they can do just until they get rid of the human component here.
So, and do you think that, I mean, we still only have 11 or 12 vehicles operating in Austin. Do you think, I mean, basically we haven't opened it up to the public yet. So it would seem like 11 or 12 would be all you need if you're only having, employees and friends riding around in the vehicles.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, why do such a huge area in the Bay Area? I
Yeah.
mean, like it was just there this past weekend, and I mean, you're going to take multiple hours, I think, to go from one end of that to the other. Um, so, I mean, I guess you certainly can do that with a human operator, but I don't know. It seems odd to have an area that large and to go into it with like only a dozen vehicles or so, because then like you're essentially guaranteeing extremely long wait times,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Unless you've got like I don't know 50 or 100 vehicles or something like that. So I find that size to be a curious decision. So either they're going to really surprise us and there will be like 50 or 100 vehicles, or it's going to be such a small pool of vehicles or a small pool of people who have the app, and wait times are presumably going to be super long just because it's if you've only got a dozen vehicles in an area that size, like bare minimum you're going to be waiting like 10-15 minutes for
Yeah.
travel time.
No kidding. All right. So to you, you'd like to see that you think when we get the rider, I call it the safety rider, not the safety driver.
Hmm.
When we get the
Yeah.
safety rider out of the seat, that might be kind of the stimulus that might everybody might go, okay, it's ready to go.
Yeah, I think so because I mean that does two things. I mean, one, it's just it gives management seal of approval that they actually think the safety critical interventions are so trivially low now that you actually don't need that. So that's a huge boost of confidence, I think, if they actually give that bit of or if they make that move. But then, the other thing which I alluded to is just that you uh, remove like one of the most stringent constraints to your growth.
Right.
So, that's really exciting for two reasons, if and when they can do that.
So usually, so kind of in a related issue, usually when Bradford's on and I ask him questions about the numbers, he usually goes, "Well, let me, I'm going to have to ask Matt." So maybe I'll get the straight scoop from you here without having to go through Bradford. So I was looking at the numbers that people are projecting for the third quarter.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, right now we've got the trending on Model Y and trending on Model 3 is at record highs
Hmm.
on Google. And so that means a lot of people are aware of the $7,500 going away.
Hmm.
That should mean that we should, at least in at least in the United States, we should be able to sell a bunch of cars in the third quarter. Um, some people are talking about 465. I think AJ is down around 400,000. Have you thought about this number yet? Do you have a theory?
Yeah, so I mean, it seems pretty clear to me that we'll have some pretty significant boost from where we were in Q2. But I haven't done a whole lot of thinking about it other than like I think I don't even know what's in my model right now, but I guess it's like 440 or something like that. So I always want to be like somewhere somewhat middle of the road. And if there's reasons to really dig in a quarter, like in Q1, for example, we spent a lot of time thinking about this early on because we had the Model Y changeover, and it just seemed like this was a very significant event impacting Q1 deliveries that not a lot of people were thinking about, at least like in January,
Yeah, yeah.
when the stock was above 400. So, for this quarter, I think it's going to be certainly a positive sequentially. Probably still lower than the levels we would have hoped we would have been at a few years ago. And so, my analysis kind of stops there for now. But if there's a reason to kind of reevaluate, then we'll dig in.
All right, so sequentially higher. The other major category still for Tesla, of course, is energy, and you are one of the energy gurus. I
Nerd, as I would say, but yeah.
nerd, energy nerd. And then Bradford, has his own. his own sense, I guess, of the energy sector. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, we got 10 gigawatts. We should be flat out. We should be able to get a full 10 gigawatts out of Lathrop. We've
Hmm.
got Shanghai on board now, and it's in the ramp. And I think you've got some estimates on that. And then we've got roughly 2.5 to 3 gigawatts coming out of well, the solar wall panels, the
The
I
power
always
wall.
power walls. I always, for some
Yeah.
reason, I have a problem with the name. Anyway, the power walls. So maximum, let's say, maybe fourth quarter, first quarter next year, we might be able in a max month. We got all this up and down stuff, but we might maximum be able to do 23.
Hmm.
So I'm just backing up and realizing we only did 10 last month, or the last on the call here. We only did around, I think, a little less than 10, right? So we
I think it was like 10-4 or something like
10,
that.
all right. And so the lumpiness should be going the other way, maybe coming up this quarter. I'm thinking we should be over 15, but tell me what you're thinking in terms of where Shanghai is now and whether you think my 15 is crazy.
Um, I wouldn't say crazy, but that would be optimistic in my mind. Lathrop, I think it's probably fair to assume is doing about 10 per quarter, as you said. Um, I always think of Powerwall as being like maybe one and probably like maybe a little bit less than that even.
I
So
was
maybe.
I'm sorry. I meant that was my annual.
Oh, annual. Okay. Okay. Yeah, sure. So on a quarterly, I mean, it's like rounding error. It's like, 0.5 or something like that.
Right,
Um, so you've got that. Then the question just becomes what's going on in Shanghai,
right.
which we actually have a bit of information about because Tesla Shanghai just posted. It was either yesterday or the day before that they had produced their 1,000th Megapack. So, at 3.9 megawatt hours each, that's 3.9 gigawatt hours cumulatively that have come out of Shanghai. Keep in mind that they started production late last year, so you're like just over half a year
Hmm.
into the production ramp,
Hmm.
and cumulatively they're at 3.9 gigawatt hours. So if you think about what's their kind of current spot run rate, maybe it's something like 2 gigawatt hours per quarter, something like that would seem to be about a reasonable guess to me. And so that's going to be ramping up to 10 over the next, I would guess, year or so.
Okay.
But one thing, so maybe by fourth quarter they're at a run rate of 6 or something. I think that'd be a pretty good outcome for Shanghai. Now in China everything goes faster, so
Yeah.
maybe I'd love to be proven wrong on that, but I'm a little weary from how long Lathrop took to ramp up. I mean, it really shocked me how long that took
Yeah.
to kind of get up to full output. But that said, it's not just the production that you need to look at in terms of having an impact on the financial statements, because the revenue recognition for these mega packs is such a long, stretched out program where you've got like a payment up front, like at contract completion, then like when the mega pack is produced, there's a percent of your revenue that you can release when it's delivered on site, then when there's testing done, and then on like final energization and commercial operation date, then like you fully recognize all the revenue. Well, at least in the US, that process can take multiple years. So as like the factory is kind of ramping up production, there's a lag where the revenue is kind of ramping 12 months ish later. So while I think it's exciting what's happening at Shanghai, and I would expect that the types of projects that they're selling into, a lot of them presumably in the Chinese market, I think those are probably going to move faster than what we're seeing here in the US energy market with all of its red tape and the interconnect delays, and like it's just a hot mess. So I think that they'll go slightly faster, but still, I think if you look at what's actually deployed, I would guess, we won't get to 20 gigawatt hours quarterly until, maybe late next year, just because
Okay.
of this revenue ramp.
Okay. All right. So the 15 that I'm calling for would be taking into consideration the lumpiness.
Hmm.
So in other words, since we had kind of a low quarter this last quarter, we might have a higher quarter this time. At some point, it has to show up. Right.
Well, yeah, yes and no, because you're like in the history of the energy business, we've always been ramping, right? And we're still ramping. So you're gonna have that lumpiness, and you're gonna have bigger lumps as the amount of your ramp increases.
Right.
Now, as you get some stability on the first 2 3 plants, and then your incremental mega factories are a less significant portion of the entire batch, then maybe some of that lumpiness goes away. But I do think lumpiness is going to be somewhat inherent in the business in the
So
long run.
would it be a conservative estimate then to say we would have sequentially more ship?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. All
Yes.
right, so
I will agree to that. Yeah.
sequentially more. All right, and we'll have sequentially more services as we always do. So overall, it should be a better quarter. I would also suspect that the margins on the vehicles because of the United States, we should have higher margins in the US. Usually third quarter, fourth quarter is getting better in China. So I don't know how the competition will fare out there, but maybe the same margins there, same margins in Europe. So overall, we could end up with a pretty decent third quarter when it comes to the profit and loss.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, you have to keep in mind too that in early Q2, there was still a fair amount of ramping up for the new Model Y in most of the factories. Maybe Shanghai less so, but certainly in the U.S. and I think in Germany as well. So presumably, if you're running closer to flat out, closer to max production capacity at those lines, that's going to help a lot. Maybe not a lot, but that'll help meaningfully. Where I'd expect probably at least another 1% out of automotive gross margin. And I think Tesla's going to have some pricing power this quarter too,
Yeah.
because that credit's going away here in the U.S. So we were seeing a lot of discounting earlier, but less of that now.
So Elon was worried about the fourth quarter. And so I would
Hmm.
say sequentially, energy should be up in the fourth quarter compared to the third quarter. Again,
Hmm.
we could have lumpiness that could throw all that off, but just in general, we should see an increase in energy. And in the fourth quarter, I guess the worry would be that we would see a problem in the United States in terms of Model Y and Model 3 sales because of the pull forward from this third quarter. But now the United States is only part of the overall market, and we're going to be adding this, and so China is usually doing great in the fourth quarter. So we're going to be adding this new Model Q,
Hmm.
whatever that is, but it's going to be at a lower price, so it's going to have a better TAM. Would you think there's any chance that the Model Q makes up for the loss of the Model Q plus maybe China's extra kind of fourth quarter boost could make
Hmm.
up for the losses, or do you think we'll be sequentially down in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, my best guess is that we'll be slightly higher in the fourth quarter. So yeah, you're right that we do have some headwinds, with demand pull forward. I think that's very real. But I'll also say I was surprised when this, $7,500 tax credit was reintroduced several years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to be swimming in demand, and it didn't really seem to move the needle all that much, which really surprised me.
Yeah.
So, I think the reasons people buy cars is a little bit more complicated than just dollars and cents, which is like what Elon talks about a lot of times. It's just like, oh, you have to make it affordable. You have to make it affordable. That's definitely an important piece of the equation. But I think like if you want a Model Y, you'll buy one regardless of whether the tax credit's there or not. So yeah, I do think that that'll create a little sequential weakness as you pointed out. But yeah, certainly offsetting that, we've got these, new variants that they're talking about introducing. So yeah, my best guess would be modestly higher in Q4 than Q3, kind of putting all that together, but a lot of puts and takes in there.
A lot of puts and takes. So, where do you fall in the world of robotaxi rollout? I'm seeing people that are like, well, there's not going to even be, it's not even going to be significant revenues and or profits until 2027. Of course, I just believe whatever Elon says. That's just my method. So I believe that we're going to see significant revenues second half of 2026. What do you think is going to happen, based on what we're seeing right now?
I was kind of cracking up when I heard Elon say that on the call because like that's exactly what I was modeling.
Okay.
So I modeled a ramp that was more conservative than what Elon had been talking about previously. I think he was talking about like 1 million units by the end of 2026.
Right.
Um, so I forget my exact numbers, but I think I was something like a few thousand by the end of this year and a few tens of thousands by the end of next year.
Okay.
But like even at that level of scale, and presuming by that point that your operators are out of the equation, because like that's actually critical to getting your
Right.
gross margin on this
Right.
positive. Um, So presuming that's the case, then, just like the simple math of, okay, you've got 1,000 vehicles, you know, even if it's great margins, it doesn't move the needle. But at, 10,000, it's like starts to be somewhat interesting. But at, 40, 50, 60,000, that's when it's like meaningfully contributing to the earnings per share growth. And then, so yeah, that's a long way of saying I agree with what Elon was saying, and it's consistent with what I was assuming, which is, a more conservative ramp than what they've been saying, publicly, but, still reasonably aggressive in terms of, ramping up pretty quickly to many different geographies.
So my numbers that I've done a dozen times, and I've looked at Kathy's numbers, I've looked at Elon's numbers, I've looked at everybody's numbers, and I'm believing that at a bare minimum, a cyber cab is going to make in the fleet, not Airbnb, but in the fleet,
Hmm.
a bare minimum is going to make 40 grand a year. Bare,
Hmm.
I mean, it might be 60, but it's not going to be less than 40, assuming it's being used, assuming there's a demand for the vehicle that's keeping it pretty active. Is that a number that you think is close?
Yeah, it's on the high end of what I would
Okay.
expect, and
Tell me
and
your
I
low end. Tell me your low end.
Well, the way I think about it is that there's going to be some saturation. So like I think when they are first entering a new market and they are supply constrained, I think they'll charge $3 a mile or something like that, and collect a huge amount of cash flow. I think as they scale up to tens and hundreds and eventually millions of vehicles, and at that point you're talking about like a TAM that's actually greater than Uber's total miles driven. So that's like a key metric that I'm looking at is okay, at like what percentage of Uber's annual miles driven is Tesla at this fleet size.
Mhm.
And so in order to get beyond that point, I'm assuming the price has to come down reasonably higher so that the price elasticity of demand will relate mean that the TAM's getting higher to kind of support that volume.
Right.
So in the early years, yeah, I think you can definitely be seeing $40,000 a year or so. But I think when you've got some saturation in the market and you're needing to compete on price a little bit more, at that point, I think maybe it's more like, and this is just kind of going off memory. It's been a while since I've refreshed this, but the economics are still phenomenal. But at $2, they're slightly less phenomenal, and at like $1, they're still really good, and you can get enormous TAM. And so you make up for it on scale, but the per
Yeah.
unit economics aren't going to look that good. So yeah, it's a bit of a non-answer, but I think it is going to change over time.
All right. One of the reasons I asked that question is the one of the questions at the earnings call was how are you going to finance these cars? And
Hmm.
it occurred to me, well, okay, if I'm making $40,000 on the car, let's call it 4,000 a month just to make it easy. And they only cost me 16,000 to build. I'm paying for it in 4 months. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure that this is going to be a big hit to the balance sheet.
Yeah, I actually built out a model about a year ago, specifically asking this question, like with the most aggressive assumptions, like assuming every single vehicle Tesla just decided to own,
Right.
what would that look like in terms of their cash balance? And it was the math of it kind of surprised me because I think at the time it was about a $30 billion cash balance. And the payback on the individual units was, like you said, it was like 6 months. It was
Right.
like crazy. But because they're ramping production so quickly, like that also takes a huge amount of capital. So what surprised me was it was something like 20 or 25 billion of capital to like draw down. So they were, in other words, they were drawing down to like only about $5 billion of cash on the balance sheet. But
Wow.
then but then that was like their break even. And yeah, exactly. And then it just shot up like crazy. So I was like, all right, well, even in the most aggressive case where they wanted to, like cell phone all of that, it still works. You don't need third party financing. You'd probably want it, to be honest with you. I don't
Yeah.
think you want to fly that close to the sun.
Yeah.
But I was kind of surprised that worked.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have a big difference though between you and Elon with regard to the end of next year. How
Mhm.
far off? When would you put it at his million units or more?
It's it's a tricky. So I would certainly, if I had to guess, I would certainly say in 2027 we'll get there. So I don't have like some fundamental disagreement, or like there's a lot of people that just say like, oh, the Robotaxi business will never be like that profitable, or it'll be till 2030 or something like that. Like once the business model works, and especially once they get that, driver out of the seat, or the passenger, as you said, it's kind of off to the races. So, I want to be reasonable in my modeling, so that because we've had like 5 years straight, maybe 8 years straight of delays on this front.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised at all if we do get to 1 million units by the end of next year, because this is a bit of a 0 to 1 moment we're going through right now. And we know they got the manufacturing scale. I mean, they could flip a switch right now and be at over 1 million units that
Right.
are at least customer owned.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I would guess 2027, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if we actually get to it next year.
And the whoops, thought in, thought out, or train in, train out. Anyway, we have also coming up is going to be the semi,
Yeah.
and you were there at the breakout. Lars said that is his favorite product.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's your favorite product. It's going to roll out next year. How come we're not hearing anything about it being ready to go for autonomous? So what do you think about that?
Yeah. We've certainly seen some issues like on Cybertruck rolling out, for example. That was a new form factor where they had to release FSD. And certainly Bradford was talking a couple times about how the behavior on Cybertruck is actually quite a bit different than on, Model Y or Model X. So like it was I think the phrase he used, which I loved, is like it doesn't realize that it's got bigger hips. And so I think there is a bit of that where like you've got a good base model when you're going to a new form factor, but a lot of those intricacies of like how wide do you make this turn, if you've got a bigger vehicle, like it can actually be significantly different.
Yeah.
And for a semi, like we've all seen those things where like to go this way with a semi, you've actually got to like turn left to turn right. So you've got that dynamic of being a way more significantly different form factor, plus like the trailer on the back is like a whole other issue. And that ramp is going to be significantly slower than even the Cybertruck. So you're going to have a more limited data set to kind of train on. So yeah, I think they'll get there eventually. And I think also politically, it might be a good idea as you're trying to get into, new customers, areas to say we're not going to eliminate drivers, truckers' jobs, right out the gate. So I think there could be a bit of that, job protectionism sort of situation at hand also.
So I know you love the financial numbers, and one of the ones that's been driving me crazy has been the fact that that nobody is talking about the reduction in COGS that's going to come as a result of Optimus at the
Hmm.
factories.
Yeah.
So even if we only have 5,000 or 10,000 working in the factories in the first half of 2026, that I've done some numbers on that. We could be talking about a $500 million a year reduction in COGS if they're working 4 shifts. Are you surprised that nobody's taking that into consideration in their 2026 thinking, or is that too much in the weeds for most people to be thinking about?
Well, I think when most people think about Optimus, it's like this, 10 trillion plus dollar opportunity. And so that's how they think about it, is something like in, 2029, 2030, that can be the thing that after Robotaxi, that takes us to the next promised land after that. I think you're absolutely right, though, that there's going to be some marginal benefits in the in the intermediate term. I think those are just less sexy potentially than some people are thinking. So no, I do think there will be some benefits. I think it's the sort of thing, kind of like Robotaxi right now. Like I think it's actually hurting your margins right now to run the Robotaxi business, because like you got so many people micromanaging to make sure that it's not doing anything dangerous, that your gross margin, I'm sure, is actually negative right now, and I'm sure the same thing is the case with Optimus. But it seems that it's only a matter of time where it's actually doing economically valuable work within Tesla, and then from there it can kind of scale out to some other areas. So Yeah, I definitely think that, the first fruit we'll see on the Optimus side is not going to be sales, it's going to be cost savings.
So, and then to get even more arcane, as an ex-manufacturer, I one of my biggest expenses after electricity was freight.
Sure.
And I've seen that Tesla is using some of their own semis in their own fleet for
Hmm.
for hauling, in particular, I think for shipping cars. I don't know if they're using any of it for picking up raw materials or if they're using it a lot for shipping finished product. But this could be a massive savings to the extent that do you think that they will build up their own fleet, or do you think they'll concentrate on customer vehicles first?
I would think they'll concentrate on customer vehicles first. I mean, it's been so long in the making that they've been, working with these customers to deliver. So, I think they want to make good after some lost time. But my expectation would be that they'll be able to sell or use as many of those as they can possibly make, at least for the foreseeable future.
Right, right, right. So long term, once they become autonomous, it would almost seem crazy, though, at that point, not to want to have almost 100% of your raw materials and your shipments be in your own vehicles, because the combination would save, huge amounts on some raw materials. Um,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think that there's also some complications to going fully autonomous on that front that make it, hard to do in the short term. I mean, one of the things is just like you get to the location, you need to, go to the like manager, have them sign off on the paperwork, help unload the vehicle potentially. So like, there's some of that. Maybe an Optimus could do it, but like just the complications on the edges of this, for all the stuff that's not actually driving on the road that the human does. I think they're not going to focus on that in the short term for those reasons. But
mhm.
yeah, in the long term, I think this is going to be a huge product. And I mean, coming back to the energy side, even we've looked at these it's like mega chargers where they're going to need to be drawing multiple megawatts to power these things. And I'm super excited about a lot of the stuff that Tesla is going to be able to be doing when you start actually smartly managing that. Because right now, like that is not being managed smartly, and I think it's going to be a big tool that they can put in their customers' toolkit. Not only, the great experience of driving these, but also, okay, you've got a let's say it's a 2 megawatt load that you can kind of turn on and off, and then you've got a 500 kilowatt hour battery pack times however many semis you have that you can, sell into the grid those services. Like that's extremely valuable, and it's something that is not being taken advantage of at all right now.
Okay, so on a related subject, you said that you're kind of an energy nerd, and so am I. Uh,
Hmm.
and we've got Brian Wong. I don't know if you and Brian ever speak. I think sometimes you're on some of the channels together, some of the other.
Yeah, I've done at least one video with him. But
Right,
yeah,
right.
it's been a while.
So, we're sitting here with a Republican administration, which everybody knows I'm conservative, and think that Trump is doing everything right, except his entire administration is so down on solar, and they seem to ignore the fact that there's batteries. Um,
Hmm.
and it kind of rubs me the wrong way that they'll say things like, "Well, solar doesn't work at night," when I'm sure 100% of them know that there's batteries that are associated with the projects. So, do you think Elon says that he's thinking about starting a solar factory? Do you think that he will start a solar factory? When do you think we'll hear about that?
It's hard, man. I back in my energy days, I toured the first solar factory that they have in Ohio, and it was honestly so impressive. I mean, you're a manufacturing guy, you kind of know the different like processes that you can follow in terms of like, are you doing like a flow-based manufacturing process? Are you doing, customized? And they were almost perfectly towards the flow. There were just a couple things I would say that made it not a flow. And this was like their demo factory in the United States. They had factories that were like significantly larger, like in Malaysia and overseas, that were even more automated and lower cost. So I just think there's so much of a head start that this industry has had in ripping out costs over the last 30 years, that I have so much faith and trust in Elon that I'm sure he could do something, but it's just like you're going against it's not like the car industry where you're kind of fighting some incumbents that are like
Slow.
just like kids with their shorts down and their shoes tied. It wasn't that hard to outrun them. But I think with the solar industry is like all the competitors in China, even the ones here in the US, like First Solar, like just extreme years that of like thinking deeply about every step of the process. How do we strip out costs and improve yield and reduce the installation cost? So honestly, I'd love to see Elon do this because I'm sure everyone in the data center industry would have said the same thing that like, oh, like Elon, you can't just step in and like make a data center in 6 months. Like, we've been doing this for years. So I'm slightly cautious that like, Elon is Elon and he can do Elon things. But I'm at least somewhat skeptical that he could do it. But I honestly I would love if he tried.
So one of the cabinet members, I don't remember who it was, said today that he doesn't expect to see any new solar projects starting in the United States. You've got this big background. I'm sure you're still in touch. I would think that was probably the statement that's going to age the poorest. What do you think?
There's been so many stupid ones. Yeah, I mean, all the stuff Trump's been saying about like beautiful coal and like how like, nobody likes wind energy because like it's so ugly. And I'm like, I coal is just losing on economics. I mean, so this company I used to work for, we ran a natural gas plant, we ran peakers. I was in charge of the wind business. We had a solar business that I was also like heavily involved in, and I deeply understood. We had a coal plant as well, so like I knew the economics of all these different plants, and it was just like, okay, well, coal doesn't make any sense anymore. The maintenance costs are insanely high because like you've got all this like fuel buildup, and you need like a full-time maintenance staff, and on top of that, the fuel costs are really high. So it's like whether you're looking at the variable cost or the fixed cost or the downtime, like coal lost kind of across the board. So there's so many stupid comments coming out of the administration on the energy side that it's I think you're spoiled for choice if you're trying to crown a winner. Um, but yeah, like solar, like this. I guess in a more serious tone, I do follow this space closely. There's a lot of podcasts I listen to. Like this is definitely going to create a headwind. You had probably multiple tens of gigawatts of solar projects, in various stages of the queue to get connected to the grid. Now, probably more of those are going to not pencil out now based on the credits going away. But to say that like there won't be any more solar projects being built is really dumb.
So given that this is what I asked this question the other day, and unfortunately I didn't get the answer that I was hoping. Well, no, that's not right. I didn't get a good enough answer to this. So with your knowledge, with these huge data centers going in, and they need massive amounts of power,
hmm
why wouldn't what Trump actually said the other day, why wouldn't they put the solar right where the factory is going to go, the knowledge factory is going to go in, and so we don't have to worry about the grid. We can have the power plant like Elon is doing in Memphis, have the power plant right where the knowledge factory is going to be.
Yeah, so the problem with doing that is like to actually run these GPUs and into I mean if you've got a like 1 gigawatt seems to be like the new scale that a lot of these data centers are targeting to run a 1 gigawatt factory AI factory at scale like that. You would need a absolutely massive amount of solar. Now, solar has like a capacity factor, which means like what percent of its nameplate capacity is it producing on average? For solar, that's between 25 and 30%, in most geographies in the US. And so, that means you'd need like 4 times as much solar output. So in other words, you need a 4 gigawatt solar array just to match a 1 gigawatt data center. Then on top of that, the age-old adage that the sun doesn't shine at night, you're going to need a massive amount of batteries, and because you'd be operating for 8 hours more than that at during the overnight hours, you need just insane amounts of batteries to actually get that done. So I think when you do the math of the capital cost of to actually like truly disconnect from the grid and do it behind the meter based on solar, that's just I think operationally not as attractive. So that's why I think most companies in the space that are looking at, okay, if you do go like if you want to detach from the grid, how do you do it? And most of them are landing on natural gas. So I think that just
But
it's
I
more
under,
reliable. It's a
yeah,
smaller footprint
but I understand that there's like a 5 year waiting time for
for the turbines. Yeah.
turbines. Yeah.
Yeah, so like that's the kind of catch 22 that we're in is like, okay, there's no good options now. You can wait 5 years to connect to the grid in some places. You can wait 5 years to get a gas turbine. You can, do what Elon did and buy a 2 gigawatt power plant from overseas. All right, that's probably not a very scalable solution, but like we're at this point where like there's no good solutions right now because like these utilities are really caught between a rock and a hard place. Like just to build out the transmission and distribution infrastructure and the additional power generation that's needed, like it is going to take 5 years at this point. So if you want to go behind the meter, you have to start getting creative, and I think that's the point where a lot of these data centers are. It's like if you want to prioritize speed right now, then you have to do something creative. Now, like something creative could be solar and batteries, but I do suspect there's going to be other more creative solutions out there.
So what about two of the more creative solutions I've heard is Alberta and underwater. So you put it in Alberta in the Rocky Mountains, you put it in a place where it's cold all year round. Pretty
Hmm.
much in some of the years you got some of the year you've got snow. You've also got
Yeah.
tremendous power capability in that neighborhood. All kinds of different power sources in that area. And the other one was I think China is experimenting with putting them in the ocean. So
Hmm.
what about those two solutions?
So my question on the ocean, I hadn't heard that one before, but like how do you power it then? Because you still need power generation. And I think with both of those, one other question that pops into my mind is latency, because like historically you've put a lot of these data centers, especially the ones that are going to be used for AI inference rather than for AI training. You really need those close to the population centers, so that you're not waiting, a good second to, just on latency. Now it wouldn't be, quite that long, but that's a very serious consideration for a lot of these providers that are building out these data centers is how close am I to the population center that I'm serving. So latency would be a little bit of a concern for me. Now, like on the margins, like will we see some data centers, going to Alberta or like a pilot program underwater? Yeah, I think we will. But it's like I think we just are in this situation right now where, all right, the fast thinking data centers bought GE turbines, and got their interconnect started like 2 years ago, so they can come online in the next 2 years. Um, Elon bought a 2 gigawatt combined cycle power plant from Europe somewhere, so like he can get his up and running. But what's everyone else going to do? Because like if you want power in the next 2 years, there are not many options right now. There probably are still a few more niche sites like that where you could go and take over some, particular area. Like I know Microsoft had this deal with 3 Mile Island, for example,
Right.
to go and power their nuclear thing. But then even that got turned down like a year later on some lawsuit, some legal challenge.
Oh.
So, they were really forward thinking and had this like niche product that or a solution which seemed, like it would really help them to scale up. And then even that got bogged down in the regulatory morass. So, yeah, I think we're going to start seeing companies get a bit more creative.
Oh, yeah, okay. Hit more and more and more. I guess the other side of it, of course, which is maybe outside the scope of this conversation, is that they will get more and more efficient. I mean,
Hmm.
the chips will get more efficient. They'll be able to work with less electricity or with less heat or give off less heat. Some of these ideas might be helpful.
Yeah, so I do think that's definitely going to happen. But I'm kind of in Jensen Huang's camp here, where you're going to have all these efficiency improvements. You're going to have all these, things which make the, marginal unit of compute a lot cheaper. But then that's going to drive so much more incremental demand, especially on the inference side. So I think the net effect of those two trends is going to be more demand for GPUs, more demand for power. Um,
So what do you think of Elon's idea to use 8 million Tesla vehicles as inference?
I think it's really smart. I mean, I've been dying for Tesla to take some of
Experiment?
these distributed resources that they have and start monetizing them. Now, I don't think it's gonna like drastically move the needle to be honest with you, but especially like I wonder he's been talking about this for a long time. He was talking about how important AI 6 is going to be, and I'm wondering if he's got that business model in mind, with AI 6, on both Optimus and the robot and the vehicles to be doing that at scale. I think with AI 5 that design's already finalized. They're probably getting close to production next year. Um, so maybe they haven't optimized that for distributed inference, but yeah, I would think that's certainly top of mind for AI 6, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, okay. It'd be okay with me. We only drive the car, a few hours a week, so I think, we could provide inference a lot.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Like I love the idea of that.
Right. All right. Well, anything I've left out that was important before we take a look at the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, just last thing on that topic, you've got this big battery sitting there. You can also use the battery to provide grid services. Now,
Right.
this is you need V2G for that. So, like, the Cybertruck's really the only vehicle capable of doing that right now. Although even there, you can get creative by introducing some things like interruptible charging. So, if you just give your local utility the right to cut off your charging in a grid emergency, then they should be able to pay you for that. So, I ran a bunch of numbers on like if you have solar and a battery and a Tesla vehicle, like how much income could you be producing annually? And back at the time, this was maybe 4 years ago, but I was coming up with like $650 a year or so.
Huh.
So, I mean, you add inference on top of that,
Yep.
you could be talking about $1,000 a year of like purely passive income, which like what I'm honestly more excited for is what that would do to kind of stabilize the grid because the way the grid is built right now is just it's so inefficient because you've got all these resources, like all of our EVs that are sitting in our car that for the most part the grid is just completely ignoring. And so I think it should be connected. It should provide some services, and then of course we should get paid for providing those services.
So it can't, maybe I'm just completely nuts, but is it impossible to turn an existing vehicle, an existing Tesla vehicle into a one that can pump electricity back out the other way? I mean, isn't that just something that would hook up to the same portal, but would be a different kind of hookup?
I'm not certain about this, but I do think their onboard inverter isn't capable of the two-way
Oh,
flow. So I think the answer is no. At minimum, you need some sort of retrofit. I think on these vehicles. So yeah, I think for existing vehicles, you'd need I don't know. You'd be able to provide fewer services, but even interruptible charging is a that's probably like the most valuable service, honestly. Um, and then but like for a lot of the newer vehicles, I do think they're going to kind of take this cybercab architecture that they figured out with the 48 volt and being able to provide vehicle to grid or vehicle to vehicle or whatever, and integrate that. I would expect that they figure out how to do that cost efficiently and have that as a standard on a lot of new products once they do some refresh at some point.
all right. We still have a little bit of time here, and I'm going to ask you a question that I've been wanting to ask. I think her name is Iona, that she was just on The Limiting Factor. Is that her first name?
Lola Hughes.
Well, yeah, I've been trying to get her back on my show. I had her back on my show. I had her
Is
on
it
my show a
Lola?
couple of years ago. But you might have the answer. It seems to me everybody's saying, "Oh, now that we don't have these credits, that's going to reduce the total available TAM for the mega packs."
Hmm.
When I last spoke to her, the TAM for mega packs, pretty much no matter what, was
Hmm.
what Elon says, which is unlimited. Between hospitals that will replace lead acid batteries for their backup power, um, manufacturing companies that couldn't use solar without the batteries, but with batteries, it would make sense. Military, peaker plants, even nuclear can help the grid. According to Elon, every single of these new data centers should be using batteries in order to balance the power
Mhm.
surges. Do you think there's any new limitation on that TAM? Do you believe that it's less uh, of an opportunity right now than it was?
No, I agree. I think it's unlimited. I mean, even like the data center aspect alone, I think is such a huge opportunity. I mean, if you look at how many they've got in that 10, okay, I'm blanking on the name of that one that they've got in for AXA Colossus data center
Oh, Memphis, yeah, glasses.
in Memphis. Yeah. Like one of the super interesting things I was diving into this recently was the inverters that they have on there are like extremely valuable because you can take solar that's generated in DC and plow that into the Megapack and then have it output, the AC that the data center needs. And then with the same Megapack, you can take, AC from the grid, put that in there and have that, spit out what you need at the data center. And so like it allows you to handle a lot of the different generation sources with a lot more flexibility than would otherwise be the case. So it's the value that they provide is not simply about storing energy. It's like the flexibility that it gives you to provide creative solutions. Like on Colossus, for example, I don't know how they connected to the grid so quickly, but I'm almost certain that a big piece of it is because they are using megapacks to limit the maximum draw that they have on the grid at any one particular point in time.
Mhm.
And so if you can do that, then you can say, all right, we've got, let's just say it's 400 megawatts from the grid, kind of guaranteed. Then we could run these, gas turbines or the gas recip engines, to bring us up to maybe 600 megawatts, and then we can maybe generate a little bit more to charge the batteries, and then even it all out over time as the load from the data centers is kind of fluctuating. The megapacks allow you to, like, from many different generation sources, give you like a pure pristine output at the frequency levels and voltage levels and everything that you need right at your data center. So they are problem solving tools, and the problems that the energy sector is facing are only increasing. And so that's why I think that the demand is actually unlimited despite the credits going away.
All right, then let's take a quick look at the numbers so I can get you on to your next project. We have Tesla down 300, I'm sorry, down 3.38% today, down to 308. Are we going to test 300?
I think we'll test it. I don't claim to be a technical guy. We do have somebody who helps us with that, but I've been surprised at the weakness. So I think we test it now that we're this close.
Okay. And Dow ended up down 0.74. The Nasdaq ended up down 0.03, and the S&P ended up down 0.37. It seems like maybe some people are thinking the market's stretched, getting a little bit out there, and maybe we need to have a little bit of a cooling off period, a little bit of maybe a 5% retracement.
Yeah, I'm not going to call for that necessarily, but I think if you look at what happened so far this year, I mean, huge rally to start the year, then like tariff panic, a huge sell down, and then just another massive rally, to put a significantly positive on the year, at all-time highs. So, little cooling off period after all that volatility and all that rallying, it makes a lot of sense to me, especially because I think we're not out of the woods on, the tariff impact on the economy yet. We had a strong GDP print number. I think that was yesterday or 2 days ago. But a lot of that was just fueled by reduction of imports. Spoken to a couple clients who are impacted by the tariffs, and it's actually impacting them. So we got supply chain potential issues on the horizon. We've got slowdown in economic activity as a result of the tariff uncertainty. Now, I think Trump's doing a lot of good things to strike some deals and to strike some good deals. So I think in the long term, it's not something to be overly concerned about. But it wouldn't surprise me if there's some short-term macro choppiness, or at least just hesitation, and let's take a breather after this tremendous rally we've been on, because there's we are somewhat in uncharted waters, I think, with the magnitude of these tariffs that we're entering into right now.
So we can maybe take a guess here on Amazon. Let's see, down 3% in the after hours. So Amazon's print must not have been that great.
Not as good as Meta's yesterday, that's for
Not as
sure.
good as
Yeah,
Meta's. And let's go ahead and take a look at it was Apple was the other one, right? So Apple is up 1.83 in the after hours. So or the yeah, so we've got apparently Apple did okay on their print, but not so much Amazon. It'll be interesting to see what all that's about. And Tesla is also down a little bit in the after hours as well. But the key is always the bonds. To me, are you another guy that believes that the bonds are controlling right now?
I don't look at bonds too closely, I'll be honest with you.
Okay. We're looking at got down to 4.38 today, which is the right direction, but still way too high. But
Mhm.
at least we're heading in the right direction at this point.
I should clarify. I look at the 10-year Treasury quite a bit because that's
Okay, that's the one.
hugely impactful for equity,
Yeah,
risk for the discount rates that I use all the time.
I used to look at the 2 year and the 2 month all the time because it was inverted, and I thought,
Yeah. Mhm.
okay. But now that it's not inverted anymore, I don't even pay attention. The 10 year to me is controlling the economy. It ain't the Fed, it ain't anything.
Yeah.
It's the 10 year bonds. When those come down, mortgages come down, et cetera. We all know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where we are on that. The oil prices down a little bit finally today, down to 69.41, being impacted right now by Russia, uh,
Hmm.
because the president's promising to stop Russia's oil from being able to be sold anywhere. Did some threats against India yesterday, saying that their tariffs would be even higher if they don't stop dealing with Russia. Um, so, any thoughts about you? You're in the energy game. Any thoughts about the current price of oil or natural gas, which went under $3 this morning, but snapped back to 310?
Yeah, I'll admit to being slightly more in tune with what's going on the natural gas side of things, just because that's so much more directly related to the
Right.
electricity
Right.
market than oil. Um, I mean, I think that those are both reasonable prices, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of uncertainty with what's going on with Russia. I'm curious how this is going to pan out with Trump trying to pressure India too, because that's I mean, I think India strongly values their own independence, and they do not like being bullied on either side of this. And so my suspicion is he's going to have limited luck with this, but I don't know. I've been surprised at what he's been able to pull off so far.
Yeah, all of us have. So gold is still sitting. We have a little joke on my channel that gold is always at 33.33, but today it's actually at 33.44. But it went up to 35.50 or 60 or something, and then went way down to 3300, now back to where it's to that 33. Well, in this case, 43. Any thoughts about directionality on gold?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to see how strong it's been. Again, I don't track it super closely, but I think with all the concerns on the solvency of a lot of nation states these days, the strength of gold and even more so Bitcoin is understandable.
Well, we got silver continuing down 2.53 today, 2.53% in one day. So silver's back to 36.78. Copper, of course, we know dropped 20% because of the change in the tariff.
Hmm.
20% from 450. From 550 to 421. I'm sorry, 441. But that's 100% due to the tariff thing. So no telling where it's going to end up once the tariff thing gets fixed. Any thoughts on?
Yeah. No, I mean, just a copper obviously hugely important for the energy space. So, a lot of pipes and wires and things like
Yes,
that are
yes,
heavily reliant on copper. So, would hope that we don't see high prices on copper because that'll have an inflationary impact throughout the economy. And yeah, my overriding theme right now is we need as much energy as possible of all forms.
yes.
So I don't think we should be punishing wind or solar,
And
or natural gas or coal, honestly.
yes,
Let the market kind of figure it out.
all of the above, all of the above. All right, your Bitcoin answer is flat today, only down 76, 116,540. So are you a 250,000 or are you a 70,000?
No, I'm I somewhere in the middle, I think. I actually don't hold any right now. I have in the past. I do think it makes sense to have a, small, allocation if you're kind of concerned about nation states. But I'm certainly not a Bitcoin maxi. I've spent a lot of time kind of looking at the space, and um, the big question I have is the kind of long-term security budget for these, meaning like if Bitcoin gets to like a million or something like that, and just as the incremental issuances become smaller and smaller over time, like how do you actually keep incentivizing all of the miners who are keeping the network safe?
Right.
So that's not a problem in the next 10 years, 20 years, probably even 50 years. But in the long term, that's one of the things that has me slightly concerned. And I'm sure there's all sorts of people who spend way more time on this that'll eviscerate me in the comments, but that's just where I am.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, that's all we got because it's too early to be looking at the pre-market for the equities. So we'll have to skip that for today. So anyway, last thoughts. Anything I should have said that I didn't, or should I anything I should take back?
No, it was a great conversation. Appreciate you having me on, Randy. And I think you're getting your normal esteemed co-host back next week, if I understand correctly. So that'll be good.
All right. So Matt Smith, thank you for standing in, and to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Thanks.